Welcome, everyone, to the ACE Your RES Exam Case Studies Deep Dive.
Great to be diving in.
Our mission today, well, it's pretty straightforward. We're digging into some real-world cases, situations that actually happened in the real estate industry, and went through the whole regulatory process.
Yeah, these aren't just stories. They're packed with really vital lessons.
Exactly. Lessons for navigating the industry ethically, professionally, and honestly, probably most important for you right now, for absolutely acing your RES exam. We've got material covering several pretty fascinating cases that really bring the code of ethics and professional client care, the CEPCC, and other regs to life.
They really show the practical side of the rules.
Before we jump right in, could you do us a quick favor? Like this deep dive and definitely subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, and it means you won't miss any new deep dives we release to help you prep.
It's the best way to stay updated.
Okay, let's get started. Think of these cases like, well, like getting a map of the potential pitfalls and understanding the exact standards you'll be measured against as a salesperson.
That's a great way to put it. They take those rules you're studying, the ones that can feel a bit abstract sometimes, and show you what they actually look like in practice.
And maybe more importantly, what happens when they're not followed.
Right. Seeing the specific consequences in these scenarios makes those rules much more concrete, much easier to remember, especially when you're sitting for the exam.
Okay, let's unpack this first one. It deals with something you see all the time, but there was a crucial mistake made, we're calling it. The case of the inaccurate property size.
Okay.
So imagine this. An RES is brought on board to market and sell a 3-room HDB flat. Angmo Kio. Seems simple enough, yeah.
Pretty standard stuff.
But a really critical error popped up right at the start concerning the property size.
And this is interesting because, well, it wasn't like they were trying to deceive anyone. It was more an error of assumption. The salesperson told the seller via WhatsApp that the flat was 75 square meters.
Okay, 75 square meters. Where do they get that from?
Well, apparently from data seen on a property portal, like SRX, and just the general knowledge that flats of that type in that area are often around that size.
Ah, so a bit of an educated guess, maybe.
Kind of, but they skipped the vital step. Actually verifying the true floor area for that particular unit. They didn't check the official records.
They just sort of ran with the assumption.
Exactly, and the consequence. Well, the property got marketed, advertised, and eventually sold based on that 75 square meter figure.
And then
Later on, after the deal was basically done, the truth surfaced. The actual size was 89 square meters.
wow, 89. Hang on, that's a 14 square meter difference. That's not small.
Not at all. And as you know, for any seller, the property size is absolutely crucial when it comes to setting the asking price, negotiating everything.
Yeah, that could significantly impact the value perception.
It's fundamental. And that mistake, right there, that's where the breach happened. By not verifying the actual floor area from a reliable source before marketing it and before telling the client that size, the salesperson failed.
Failed how, specifically?
They failed in their duty to conduct their work with due diligence and care. That's a direct breach of paragraph 5.1 of the CEPCC.
Okay, so CPCC 5.1, that's the one about being careful and diligent in your work.
That's the one. It sets that professional standard of care we all need to meet. And what makes this case notable, historically speaking, is that it was actually one of the first cases dealt with under the newer letter of censure, or LOC, disciplinary regime.
Ah, the LOC regime.
Yeah, this regime allows the CEA, the Council for Estate Agencies, to issue these LOCs and also financial penalties up to $5,000 for breaches they consider, let's say, less severe compared to others.
And the outcome here.
In this case, the salesperson received a letter of censure.
You know, what's really telling from the industry perspective on this is that while everyone uses portals, HDB, InfoWeb, whatever, for market comparisons,
Which is totally normal, yes.
this case just screams that general data isn't always accurate for the specific unit you're selling.
Absolutely. And the guidance on this is crystal clear. Salespersons must verify key information from reliable sources. It's not optional.
What counts as reliable then?
Well, the SLA in LAIS, it's the Singapore Land Authority's Integrated Land Information Service, is specifically mentioned as a trustworthy source. You can get the confirmed address, the correct size, lease commencement date, owner details, any encroachments. It's the definitive source.
Okay, in LAS. Good to know.
And actually, the Professional Service Manual, the PSM, specifically Section 1.7.3, think of it as the industry's playbook for best practices. It explicitly states that salespersons should, but shall acquire and verify basic property info, and that includes size. So even though an LOC might sound less severe than, say, a suspension, it's still a formal black mark on your record. And giving a seller the wrong size, that can genuinely mislead their financial decisions and really damage the trust they have in you.
Definitely. So let's bring this back to you, the listener prepping for the exam. The big takeaway from case one is just how non-negotiable verifying key property info is. Use official, reliable sources. You just cannot rely on assumptions or general portal data.
It's about due diligence.
Exactly. It's not just exam fodder. It's about protecting your client, protecting yourself, and upholding the standards of the profession. Get the facts right.
Precisely. Foundational stuff.
Okay, let's move on. Case study number 2. This one digs into something even more fundamental. Honesty, or maybe more accurately, a really serious lack of it. We're calling this one the case of the false commission, claims and lies.
Oh boy. This one escalates quickly.
It really does. This is where a salesperson didn't just, bend the truth with a colleague. They ended up digging themselves into a much, much deeper hole with lies.
Yeah, it starts with what seems like a simple co-broking issue, but just spirals into fabricating information again and again, even critically to a public servant during an official investigation.
Okay, let's lay out the sequence. So a seller hires a salesperson. Exclusive agreement, 2% commission agreed upon. All standard so far.
Yep.
Then another salesperson, let's call her salesperson A, gets in touch, wants to co-broke. The first salesperson agrees, says, yeah, let's co-broke 50-50. But then he tells salesperson A that he's only getting 1% commission from the seller.
Which was a lie. He was getting 2%.
Right, a flat-out lie from the start.
And based purely on that lie, they sign a co-broking agreement. Salesperson A's side agrees to take 0.5% from the first salesperson's agent because, 50% of the supposed 1% commission.
Okay, so the deal's done based on false info. What happens next?
Yep. Well, eventually, salesperson A finds out the truth. Discovers that the seller actually paid the full 2%. So naturally, she confronts the first salesperson.
And does he come clean?
Nope. He lies again. This time, he claims that yes, he got 2%, but half of it, that extra 1%, was actually a referral fee he had to pay out to a friend's colleague.
Another layer. And he even told his own estate agent this story.
He did, repeated the same lie to his own agency. At this point, understandably, salesperson A had had enough and filed a complaint with the CEA.
Okay, so now CEA is involved. And this is where it gets, frankly, kind of unbelievable.
It really does. During the official CEA investigation, the salesperson lies a third time. A completely new story.
What do you say this time?
He tells the CEA investigator that the 1% referral fee wasn't to a friend's colleague, but to some third party, a MSB, whom he supposedly just met randomly at a coffee shop.
A fictional character.
Apparently. He claims Mrs. B was now unreachable, but insisted he was holding on to her 1% fee for her. And to try and back this up, get this, he gave the investigator a phone number for this MSB and even cooked up fake screenshots of call logs supposedly showing calls between them.
Fake screenshots. Wow. That's bold.
Extremely. But, CEA investigators, they do their homework. They check the phone number provided for MSB. Surprise, surprise.
It didn't exist.
Didn't exist. So they confronted the salesperson with this evidence. And finally, backed into a corner, he admitted it all. Admitted MSB was completely fictitious, admitted he gave a false number, admitted the screenshots were fake, and that he'd knowingly wasted the investigators' time and public resources with this whole charade.
Wow. The layers of deception are incredible. So the big question, what were the consequences for this whole cascade of lies?
The fallout, as you might expect, was severe. And it hit him on multiple fronts. First, because he lied directly to the CEA investigator who, during an investigation, is legally considered a public servant.
Right. That's important.
He was actually convicted by the state court under Section 182 of the Penal Code. That's the law against giving false information to a public servant.
A criminal conviction.
Yes, and he was fined $5,000 for that specific criminal offense.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Just lying to the investigator carries criminal weight. It's a massive point for everyone listening to understand.
Absolutely critical. And then, as a direct result of having that criminal conviction, his salesperson registration was immediately revoked by CEA. Gone.
So career over, essentially.
Pretty much. But it didn't stop there. He was also referred to the CEA's own disciplinary committee, the DC, for all of the breaches of the Code of Ethics, the CEPCC.
Okay, what did the DC do?
The DC hammered him with a very significant financial penalty, $16,000. That was specifically for misleading salesperson A about the commission amount in the first place.
Which specific rule was that?
That was deemed a breach of CEPC C71, which mandates honesty read together with 72A, which prohibits misleading conduct towards anyone involved in a transaction. And the DC also took into account the other lies, the ones he told to salesperson A and his own estate agent about the fake referral fee.
$16,000 on top of the court fine and losing his license.
And one more thing. He was also ordered to pay $2,000 in fixed costs back to CEA for the investigation.
That is a really, really hefty price to pay for dishonesty. It really underscores the industry perspective here, doesn't it? The absolute need for transparency, especially in co-broking situations.
Completely. Lying about commission like that, it's a direct violation of the practice guidelines on conduct between salespersons, PG 02023014, paragraph 3.3, I believe. It just destroys trust.
And damages the reputation of the whole industry.
Severely. The guidelines are super clear on this. When you decide to co-broke, the terms, and that absolutely includes how the commission is split, must be mutually agreed upon. And critically, it has to be put down in writing before you even start negotiating or doing anything on the transaction.
Get it in writing beforehand.
Yes. And spell it out clearly, actual figures or percentages so there's no room for disputes later. Ideally, for maximum transparency, the details of the co-broke agreement and the fees should really be made known to everyone involved in the deal. Buyers, sellers, everyone. It just minimizes the chance of misunderstandings or disputes down the track. There's simply no good reason to hide or lie about the commission you're getting. It's wrong, and as we see here, ultimately self-destructive.
So for you studying out there, this case is a stark reminder. Honesty isn't just, a nice ethical principle. It's a fundamental requirement of the job.
Yeah.
And the consequences for dishonesty, even starting with what seems like a small lie about commission.
They can spiral incredibly fast.
And lying to a regulator like CEA, that carries exceptionally severe penalties, including, as we saw, criminal conviction and losing your registration entirely. The core lesson here, integrity is absolutely non-negotiable, period.
It truly is the foundation. You can't build a sustainable career without it.
Right. Okay. Let's look at our third and final case study for today. This one tackles a different kind of ethical minefield, bypassing a fellow agent, specifically one who holds an exclusive listing. We're calling this the case of bypassing the exclusive agent.
Ah, yes. Dealing with exclusive agreements requires particular care. This case involves a salesperson who started off interacting with the agent holding the exclusive rights, but then, made a choice to go around them directly to the seller, trying to cut the original agent out.
Okay, let's walk through the sequence of events. So there's a property listed, salesperson A is involved in showing it, but the actual exclusive agency agreement is held by salesperson B, who, interestingly, happens to be salesperson A's brother. Now, the key thing about an exclusive agreement, as you know, is that the sellers owe the commission to salesperson B's agency, no matter what. Even if they find a buyer themselves or if another agent brings the buyer, that commission is legally due to the exclusive agency.
That exclusivity is crucial. Okay, so what happens next?
Another salesperson, let's call him Goo, contacts salesperson B, the exclusive agent, says he wants to co-broke on this property.
Right, so Goo reaches out, indicates he wants to work together, presumably bring a buyer.
Exactly. Goo arranges some viewings for his potential buyers. Now, apparently salesperson B was busy, so the viewings were actually facilitated by the property's tenant, tenant C.
Okay, so the tenant let Goo and his buyers in.
Right. And initially, Goo and salesperson B, the exclusive agent, they do correspond via WhatsApp about the property details. Standard co-broking communication. Then Goo gets an offer from the buyers he's been showing around.
Okay, offer in hand, standard procedure would be.
Standard procedure, present that offer to salesperson B, the exclusive agent he contacted to co-broke with. That's how it should work.
But that's not what happened.
Not at all. This is the pivot point. Instead of going to salesperson B, Goo asks the tenant, tenant C, to contact the sellers directly for him.
Uses the tenant as an intermediary to bypass the agent.
Seems like it. And it worked. The sellers then contacted Goo directly, using a different phone number.
Ah, so now Goo has a direct line to the sellers, cutting salesperson B out of the loop.
Precisely. And once he had that direct line, he just ran with it. Started communicating only with the sellers, completely bypassing salesperson B. He even negotiated a whole tiered commission structure directly with the sellers. And critically, he never told salesperson B any of this was happening. No heads up about the direct talks, the negotiations, nothing.
Wow. So he's essentially trying to take over the listing himself now.
Looks that way. And to make the deal happen, he offered sweeteners on both sides. He told the buyers he'd waive his commission from them, and he told the sellers he'd lower his commission from them to 1.5% and even absorb the GST himself.
Making it very attractive for both buyer and seller to deal directly through him.
Exactly. The sellers accepted his terms. Gu then met the sellers, got the option to purchase OTP, signed and exercised, and had them sign a new agency agreement, this time with his own estate agency.
Replacing salesperson B's exclusive agreement, effectively.
And incredibly, even after all this, getting the OTP done, signing a new agreement, he still didn't breathe a word to salesperson B. Salesperson B only found out the property was sold much later when he happened to contact the sellers about another potential buyer he had.
Just discovered it was gone. Ouch. And the lack of transparency didn't stop there, did it? It carried over into the official paperwork.
That's right. When it came time for the HDB resale application, Gu helps both the buyers and the sellers prepare it. Now remember, he had negotiated directly with the sellers and signed an agreement with them. But in the HDB application,
What did he put?
he actually indicated that he was the buyer's salesperson.
Even though he was acting for the sellers, that's a clear misrepresentation.
Absolutely. A misrepresentation of his actual role in how the transaction came together. The sale eventually completed under these circumstances.
Okay, so bypassing direct negotiation, misrepresentation on official forms. What were the charges and the eventual consequences for Gu?
He faced two main charges when the case went before the CEA Disciplinary Committee. The primary charge was for bypassing salesperson B, the exclusive agent, and then going on to represent the sellers himself after initially approaching B to co-broke.
Which rule did that breach?
That was found to be a breach of CEPCC 711, again, that core rule about conducting business with honesty, fairness, and integrity, especially towards fellow salespersons. And importantly, Gu pleaded guilty to this charge.
Okay, pleaded guilty to bypassing. What was the second charge?
The second charge was for misrepresenting himself as the buyer's agent in that HDB resale application when he was actually appointed by and acting for the sellers.
And the rule for that?
That breached CEPCC 6, which requires agents to act according to their clients' instructions and represent them accurately, read together with 6.4c, which specifically prohibits misrepresenting your appointment or role. The second charge, the misrepresentation one, was formally taken into consideration during the sentencing phase.
Okay, so guilty of bypassing, misrepresentation taken into account. What was the final sentence from the disciplinary committee?
The CEA DC handed down a $5,000 financial penalty and a 6-month suspension of Gu's salesperson registration.
A suspension, that's significant. Hits the ability to practice directly.
Definitely. And from an industry perspective, this case is a textbook example of what undercutting a colleague means in practice. Gu clearly maneuvered behind salesperson B's back, using the tenant to get direct access.
And his likely motive. Probably sought a chance for a better commission representing the seller, getting that 1.5% directly from them, compared to maybe splitting a 1% buyer's agent fee if he'd stuck to the co-broke.
Seems plausible.
And that whole business of marking himself as the buyer's agent on the HDB form, that looks like deliberate obfuscation, right? Trying to muddy the waters about who he was actually representing. It clearly shows he wasn't being upfront about his role, even in official documents.
You know, this case also offers some learning points for others involved, not just Gu.
For sure. For salesperson B, the exclusive agent, while he was communicating with Gu initially, perhaps being more hands-on, maybe attending those viewings himself instead of relying on the tenant, might have kept him more plugged into what was happening.
Good point. And sellers.
The sellers really needed a crystal clear understanding of what their exclusive agreement meant. They were legally obligated to pay commission to salesperson B's agency regardless of how the sale happened. If they'd fully grasped that, they might have just told Gu, sorry, you need to go through salesperson B with any offer instead of engaging directly.
That understanding of the agreement type is critical.
Absolutely. But ultimately, the onus was on Gu. Regardless of the seller's agreement or B's level of involvement, Gu initiated contact with B to co-broke. Professional ethics demanded he honor that channel and submit his buyer's offer through B.
End of story.
Pretty much. Cases like this and the penalties like suspension and fines, they serve as really important reminders for all salespersons. Uphold ethical standards. Don't engage in conduct that brings the industry into disrepute. Respectful, honest, diligent co-broking is absolutely essential for trust and for the reputation of the profession as a whole.
So thinking about your exam prep and your future career, this case really drives home what undercutting looks like. It highlights why respecting agency agreements, especially exclusive ones, is so fundamentally
You
important.
have to respect those appointments.
And critically, it shows how misrepresenting your role, particularly in official documents like an HTB application, is a serious breach with very real consequences. Suspensions, fines. It all comes down to ethical conduct and being truthful in absolutely every single dealing.
Absolutely. Your reputation and, frankly, the industry's reputation relies on it.
So reflecting on these three cases, they offer some incredibly powerful practical insights drawn straight from real-world disciplinary actions. They're not theoretical, they show the rules in action.
Yeah, looking at them together, you can really distill some core lessons. And these are absolutely essential takeaways, both for your exam and for how you conduct yourself professionally later on.
Okay, let's summarize. Lesson number one, coming straight from that inaccurate property size case. The duty to verify key property information size, ownership, lease details, using reliable official sources like SLA and CAIS is non-negotiable.
You cannot just assume.
Cannot assume based on portals, common knowledge, whatever. Accuracy is paramount. It's fundamental to professional service, client trust. You must verify the facts.
Lesson number 2, powerfully illustrated by the false commission claims case. Honesty and transparency are the absolute bedrock. There's no wiggle room. Lying, whether it's to clients, to fellow professionals, or perhaps worst of all, to regulators like CEA, carries severe consequences. We saw hefty fines, yes, but also a criminal conviction and the permanent loss of registration. Your word, your integrity, it's everything in this business.
And lesson number 3, from the case of bypassing the exclusive agent. Ethical conduct in co-broking situations and respecting your colleagues' appointments, particularly those exclusive agreements, is absolutely crucial.
You can't just cut people out.
Right. Trying to undercut another agent you've already engaged with or deliberately misrepresenting your role in the transaction on official forms, these are serious breaches of the CEPCC, and they lead to significant disciplinary actions like suspensions and fines. Professional courtesy, truthful representation, they are vital.
These cases vividly demonstrate the rules you need to know, but more importantly, they show the very real, tangible consequences of failing to uphold the standards expected of a real estate salesperson. Understanding these scenarios, these breaches, is invaluable preparation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Learning from these real situations is just essential. They give you concrete examples of the standards you must meet. We really hope you'll take some time to reflect on these cases,
Yeah.
how they illustrate the conduct expected.
Definitely. And knowing the rules inside out is critical. It helps you avoid specific breaches, pass your exam. But maybe here's a final thought to chew on as we wrap up.
Okay.
While understanding all these rules gives you the framework for not doing the wrong thing, how does actively cultivating a genuine mindset of integrity, truly putting your client's best interests first, treating colleagues fairly and respectfully, how does that go beyond just rule following and actually define what it means to be a true professional in this industry?
That's a great question to keep mulling over. Something beyond just the black and white of the regulations. Well, thank you for joining us for this ACER RES exam case studies deep dive. We sincerely hope these real-world examples have given you some crucial insights and clarity for your preparation and for your future career in real estate.